questions do you need to ask when you are starting to work on a project? I like to think of the five W's and an H as a good like vehicle for navigating this particular thing. So what you want to think of is, okay, what exactly am I doing? What does the client need? And this is important because, very often I think as young lawyers, we get excited about just learning the law and excited about just like, getting into it and getting somewhere. And we forget at the end of the day, the most important thing is what does the client need, right? And that goes to the fact of now, who is the client? And depending on where you work, sometimes your client is a direct client. So when I worked in government, my client was a direct client. When I work at the firm, my client was the senior partner who managed me or who supervised me, right? Knowing who your client is very important because that'll determine like how you're going to approach the assignment or project you've been given. The other thing you want to be very clear on is when does the client need the answer? When does the client need the project completed? Some people are very good with last minute, but I think for me personally, I prefer to have some cushion because the closer I get to the edge of the end of the deadline, the more stressed I become. So if someone says, I'll need this in a week, I'll try to work a little earlier to get it in time. You can also get it to them and see if you're on the right track and you have room there. But that's another thing to pay attention to because you also never know when a client's deadline is going to change on you. So the last thing you want to do is wait for the last minute and then they come earlier and ask and you are not somewhere further along than you would have been otherwise. The other part to think about then is, why is this project important? And not every project we do as young lawyers is going to be like life-changing in any way. But for the client, there's an importance to it. And so understanding that sometimes informs like your sense of urgency for getting this project done, but also your sense of like, I want to meet this need in a certain way. I want to be able to help them in this way. So knowing the why is important. And then where will you be looking for answers? I think this is critical because you need to map your research. You need to map where you're going. I know I would find myself like spinning in circles often. There was no strategy. It was just like, I'm trying to find this answer. And often it felt like, finding a needle in a haystack was the attempts I was making. But are you starting with primary source? Are you starting with secondary and then finding the relevant primary? Are you starting with even a colleague who already knows what needs to be addressed? And that person is going to give you the direction you need to go where you're going. So map out how you're going to get the answer for the client. And then lastly is how. How does the client want the answers? If you're working for a senior partner, maybe the senior partner wants a memo. Or if it's for a direct client in business, maybe they just want an email. But sometimes people may also want a discussion, whether it's a senior client or an external client. They may just want a conversation because they may have questions based on your research that you can shed some light on by having a conversation. So being clear on how they want the answers to be given to them is important. So when you get a new project, think about the five W's and an H, and you can navigate with that and get to where you're going.